Yeah. We're live. We're live on YouTube.
We are live. Here we are. Craft Brewed Agile. I think this is number 9 with Patricia Kong and Todd Miller and me, Ryan Ripley.
What's up?
What's
So,
up?
guys, I took this very seriously in terms of drinking, right? But I didn't prepare anything else. Like I got my face on, I made a cocktail.
You didn't see the interview questions that we sent to you in advance about how formal this is?
I mean, this is my business casual.
I
got some of my liquor up for you guys, and
classy. Always
whatever
classy
y'all
with
want to talk
Patricia
about.
Kong.
Well, you look great.
Trashy.
You have some highbrow liquor with you. I think that's awesome. So you're prepared.
I'm prepared.
And this is easy. This is an easy show, right? So we're going to tell everybody what we're drinking.
Okay.
We're gonna basically talk agile stuff for about 30 seconds and then veer off into some nonsensical space. It'll be fine.
All right.
So
And I've got a surprise for Patricia today.
And Todd has a special surprise for Patricia. So this will be fun. But we got to start with what we're drinking.
Why do I feel so nervous? I never feel nervous around these things.
You'll be fine. So I'm continuing to support our fellow PST, Eric Weber. He's got a stake in the Gathering Place in Wisconsin. So today I'm drinking Slightly Askew from the Gathering Place. It's a lovely, unfiltered Helles Lager. I'm enjoying it. 4.6 ABV. So I might have to reload to keep up with Patricia and Todd, but Slightly Askew from the Gathering Place. How about you, Todd?
Yeah, I'm going again with Tired Hands. Shout out to my boy Scott out there that always is hooking me up with these. This is a banana daiquiri milkshake IPA. That makes it crazy.
That sounds very.
It's actually awesome. There's too much to read on the label for me to figure out what the percentage is, but my guess is it's high. Oh, I also want to give a shout out to my old rugby club, Roses Rugby. I'm wearing their t-shirt today. I've worn it for a long time. It's really faded. Shout out to all my bros.
Shout out to Todd's CrossFit gym. I'm wearing their shirt.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Shout out to.
Yeah.
What do you got, Patricia?
Boston. I'm drinking water because yesterday I drank half a bottle of rosé with Todd, where I had to get all the trash talk out of me.
Yeah.
And then I'm drinking a Negroni because I don't drink beer because it makes my stomach hurt, not because I'm fancy, which is a third of gin, a third of Campari, and a third of vermouth. And today I was fancy because I sliced some orange in there.
I'm pretty sure you got me to drink one of those in Amsterdam, and I enjoyed it. It's good.
And you loved it.
I did love it.
Do you think you could make one? It's so easy.
No, I probably could later. Right now, probably not.
Okay, so I'm going to try to not do two things on this. I'm going to try not to cuss because you guys know I say swears a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try not to pee. I have to take a pee break. You know, like when you're drinking, you need to get a pee break in.
I think those are two really good goals.
Yeah.
That's literally, I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to try not to do.
So I'm willing to bet she breaks one of the two.
I will not take that bet. I guarantee one of those is going to happen. Hopefully the P one doesn't happen on the air.
Can you do like a commercial break, or do I have to pee in my pants?
We'll be all right. We'll let you take a break. So.
Okay.
All right. So we've got the drinks out of the way. Todd, what do you got?
Yeah.
You've got the insightful question. Where are we going today?
Well, I mean, should we get the surprise? No, let's hold her. Like, I'm going to just hold this over your head the entire time, this thing, and I'm going to show you and see your reaction too.
There's nothing like, making a woman feel nervous in a.
Now I feel uncomfortable.
Because I can turn it right around.
So here's something I've always been interested in. So Patricia, I feel like I've known you since before I was in the PST community. You remember we met at the, you probably maybe not remember, but I met you for the first time when I was actually a student in an SPS class.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah,
you were wearing a white button-up.
I was.
With a very huge backpack, and you looked really nervous, but you were smart. And that's what I remember.
I don't remember what you were wearing.
You shouldn't.
Okay, good. All right. So ever since then, I feel like you and I can just talk shop all day. And but what I've always really been interested in is, so what's your official title with Scrum.org? I can never remember.
Product owner of enterprise and leadership solutions.
Yeah, enterprise. So enterprise. So that's a broad spectrum, right? There's a lot of stuff, and I feel like every time we talk recently, we're talking about evidence-based management and all this kind of stuff. So I'm just kind of curious how you got into that space, and how, like, what makes your brain just live there? Because you and I talk, and we could divulge into a different path, but we're always kind of centered around those kinds of topics.
So I think she has some really good product owner thoughts too that we're going to get out of her at some point.
Guys, I'm gonna need, hold on.
But yeah, so Patricia, how did you get into, what got you into this space?
Yeah, so I into this space, well, I have a pretty corporate background. Nobody could have guessed that. And then I think it just into the agile world, it was kind of like everybody else's story, but I had my back up against the wall. And I was leading product development too at a startup. And we were like, oh crap, we can't get anything done with this agile stuff. And that was several, I don't know, over 10 years ago. And then, so I learned about that. And that was when I was living in France. And so I actually moved back from France to here. And I was like, hey, let me check out what I really want to do, because I'm tired. I was tired from having startup life. I was tired of having corporate life. And then I found Scrum.org, and Ken Schraber and I were talking, and he brought me in to manage the business operations at that point to help with some of the automation. But the thing that we were really interested in was working on something called the Continuous Improvement Framework, CIF. Right. So that was about how can you use Scrum to improve the organization. And then we were working on that and messed up several times, or just found stuff didn't work. And we've just been trying a lot of different experiments. And that's the world that I've fell into. And I'm really passionate about that, because it's saying, we know what can work about at the team level, but then you hit all these walls. So it's really challenging and interesting to think about the other spectrums and how to bring them in. Was that the answer you were looking for?
Well, yeah. I think it's an answer, right? It's a good answer.
It's the good answer.
CIF, I actually I'm interested too, CIF, because you and I have talked a lot about agility path, right? And are those things related at all, or?
Yeah, so CIF, it became Continuous Improvement Framework, CIF. We found out it was the name of a cleaning product in the UK or something. So we couldn't use that. And then there was another product manager working on it at that time. And she was a product manager then. And then it became Enterprise Scrum and all these things. And this was about 7 years ago, right? So I've been with Scrum.org almost 8 years. And it was way back. And then what we found was that it was really hard to have those conversations, and not a lot of companies were thinking that way, right? So we're researching Cotter stuff. We're looking at those different things. And then what we did find that captured the attention of some of the management executives we were talking to was, well, when you think about this, you're trying to do some sort of agile transformation, which I think is a crock of dung.
We agree.
You need to inspect. So how do you inspect? Well, now we have a conversation around evidence. And if you were to ask me what I'm thinking about, it's kind of like, we're still talking about empiricism, so it's really that. So that's how we said we need evidence. And then if you're thinking about evidence and the best available evidence, don't just think it's data. How would we be able to make decisions off of that, right? So Ryan, I'm sure you're super familiar with that kind of thinking too. And then, yeah. And then Todd, you've just been running like a bull in a china shop. Is that what people say?
Yeah,
that's what he does.
Yeah.
You could probably say that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of cool stuff in that, Patricia. One of the things that you kind of flew by is that time you spent in France. So you're actually a fluent French speaker, correct?
Wait.
That doesn't prove it.
So, but I also have heard you're also fluent in Chinese.
Yeah, I speak 2 dialects of Chinese.
And also, and English, but I think you've often said English is your worst.
I mean, yeah, that's why I cuss so much.
No.
Because you can just fill in the gaps.
I think it's really cool. Like the background you bring I'm fascinated by languages, especially the mental processing of languages. I used to be decent at Spanish, but I also play a game like the game of chess. They say is a mental language, right? So the pieces move in a certain way, and like you have to visualize and think in different patterns. And so I've always been curious about this. And I think you're the perfect person to ask this. Like, so you've got, fluent in English, fluent in French, fluent in Chinese. Do you ever find, and this is going to be such an off the wall question, like whether you get fired up about something, do you switch? Or when you dream, do you switch? Like, do you ever find certain situations bring out, but I don't mean verbally, I mean mentally. Like, do you ever just kind of switch gears and all of a sudden you're in a different language space?
So,
good question, right?
No, I think it's a good question because it's, so language is like, it's like running, right? So if like you don't practice, you lose it. So I have to keep practicing. So probably my French and Chinese is not as good as my English, which doesn't say a lot now, but there's something that's always been, I found weird with me, but I learned that I think Brene Brown has the same thing, is that when I hear someone talk and they have an accent while I'm having conversation with them, I will start to mimic their accent. And it's just very natural. And I catch it and I'm hearing, I was like, why do I have a Southern accent now? This is so weird. However, I do when I dream, it's usually in English, but then there have been times when I wake up and I'm like, wow, was I dreaming in French? Like that means I've made it, like I'm dreaming in another language. Or there's times when I read, and if I'm reading something that's written by like a PST from Germany or from wherever, I hear that dialect when I'm reading. And then I will say that with my husband, we started in English. And if I get really mad when we were in France, we'll go to English. And here, if I have crap I want to say, we go to French. I'm in Boston. But so that, and I've had different times where like I have my husband, he's speaking French, my mother's speaking Chinese. My mother can speak English. I don't know why she does this, but I'll be translating at the same time. I'll be speaking to him in French and then I'll speak to her in Chinese, and then I'll speak to him in English, and then it just goes, it's so weird. I don't know why we do that. But I think learning a language is super humbling. Yep. You have to get over a lot of hurdles and really challenge yourself, because I remember when I was learning and I would get like your ego has to really get swelled. You miss something, it just messes you up, and you have to just figure out how to get over that and still convey yourself, which is why it's probably easier for kids.
The reason I asked that is because you also brought up transformations. And I think that the same thing happens, like, because I totally agree with you. Learning Spanish, you have to really kind of drop the ego and go back to beginner mind and be willing to sound like a fool and say weird sentences. What we find, especially with Scrum adoptions, Agile adoptions, I hate the word transformation in this space, because there's no end point. There's never a time where you put empiricism back on the shelf and call it a day, right? So we're continually changing. But what we have found in our adventures in teaching, and I'm sure you've been there too, is that when that ego can't go away, when people can't get kind of, let go of this waterfall stuff was great, but now it's not. Or this PMI stuff worked for one moment, but now it doesn't. When they can't get over that hurdle, they will not or cannot or resist learning the language of Scrum. I think Scrum's a language too. It's a way of working. I think empiricism brings different words and different practices and different techniques. They get stuck. And I think language adoption is probably one of the closest experiences that we have to actually trying to put or to bring agility to an org. Do you think I'm stretching here? Does that make sense?
Do you think I can ask a question on that quick?
Yeah.
Do you think everybody in the world is capable of learning multiple languages?
No, I would say no.
What do you think, Patricia?
I think yes.
Kids.
Like if you were a child, and you also
so this is interesting, because most organizations aren't children. I'm sorry, Patricia. Right? No, like they're not. Most organizations that we deal with are not in their infancy. So are they capable?
So I see what you're saying. I think, because I know some executives, they said, hey, you're going to go work in China now. In order to work here, you need to learn Mandarin. We're going to send you up here for 5 weeks. That's all you're going to do. And when you have no choice, right, you give it and you do it and you just learn and all that stuff. I think there's a parallel with language where, you can get good in different facets of language. Maybe it's reading, maybe it's speaking, but there is that, you get 80% and then that 20% is super hard. And I think that's the same thing when we're talking about adopting a different language, a different mindset. And then there's that desire, right? So it's like, if it's innate in you and you've been around this, that's lifestyle. I think for me, another parallel would be like health and fitness and wellness, right? People all do those body transformations, keto before, keto after. You miss all the stuff in the middle. You miss when you go and binge because you're in quarantine. You miss like all these things that happen before and after. That's why transformation is not that simple as A and B for me. Yeah. So that would be another similar thing.
It's funny you mentioned that because in terms of fitness, it's something I do CrossFit coaching on the weekends, right? I've been made fun about it a lot, but it's cool.
What do they say? Why do you get made fun of?
How exactly are you ridiculed, Tom?
Yeah, exactly.
Don't make me share my surprise right now because I'll blow the lid off this whole thing.
Oh my God! I
back on topic. Okay, now we're derailed. I'm doing it. All right.
No, why do people make fun of you for doing teaching CrossFit?
It's just something like there's been a couple times where somebody finds that like on an old profile or something like that and like will introduce me at a conference about it or something like that. And people are like, ha, ha, ha. And I'm like, why is that funny? What's that funny? Yeah. And then I can't be like, why do all 100 of you think that's funny? Why'd you laugh? Like, I don't want.
Then they laugh. You're going to show something embarrassing of me because you will see me eventually.
No, not yet. No.
He'll stab you.
This is the closest we're ever going to get.
I'm going to stab you with a can of mayonnaise. Careful. Brian's going to have to dump the rest of this podcast webinar stream.
Oh, no, this is live streamed. I can't stop it. So,
yeah, this is how it tends to go. And I think I'm the derailer. I think that I'm the one that commonly derails this.
No, it's good. But so now you got to show the picture, though.
Okay. All right. So I want you to tell me what your first reaction when you see this is.
You asshole! Shit!
I can't believe you did that. Oh my. Now she looks unhappy. Todd, what did you do?
That's gross.
So we just learned, for everybody that might be watching yesterday, Patricia's scared of birds. And now I'm equally as scared of Patricia the next time that I see her.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I'm glad I didn't tell you the other thing that I'm really afraid of, because if I saw that on the screen, I would have locked up. There's two other things. Actually, I'm probably never, like, you guys are done with me, right? Like, you got your token and I won't be on this webcast.
Oh.
I'm kidding. Just kidding. So there's two things. So that's actually third on the list of three things I'm really afraid of. The first is
number one?
Rodents.
Ooh, rodents.
Yeah.
A lot of people are.
Please do not share a screen of a rodent. Like, I haven't watched Ratatouille, Disney. Second is clowns, and third is pigeons.
So clowns?
No, I can hear you guys clicking.
No, I'm deleting the picture, so I'm not tempted. No, I'm not going to delete it quite yet.
I'm with you on clowns.
Yeah, clowns terrify me.
They're creepy, right? Were you kidnapped by one?
Nope. Just they're fake. It's a painted face. They're not really happy all the time.
Yeah. Well,
do you feel like
it?
Yeah. Pee-wee's Playhouse. I don't know. I remember that had a clown in it. Do you guys feel like that about people who wear a lot of makeup in general?
I don't know.
Like the fake, like just women maybe who wear a lot of makeup.
I will actually say I think that's triggering something. I think I might. Yeah.
My wife wears very little makeup, and I love that about her.
How do you guys feel about plastic surgery?
I think it depends on the reason. I think it depends on why they do it.
I'm still trying to get you to let me do that talk.
So I want
about done.
So you have
about done in plastic surgery.
You can do it. You can do it.
We just can't use Michael Jackson. Is that what it was? Like, when was he done? Oh my God. Guys, you guys aren't going to be able to play any of this.
Patricia has a product owner talk that she wants to know. This is so bad. Oh, this might end the show, Todd. We might.
Yeah. No, it's not Patricia. It's Patrick. Patrick has a talk.
Patrick has a talk. No, so when is it enough? And they actually have TV shows about that now. It's like the 100th nose job, or I don't know. Done is a weird term to everybody, right? When are we actually done with anything? I don't know. I
wonder if we could use botched stuff as technical debt and what that does and how it holds you back. Oh,
it's a quality issue.
Right, that would imply that you would just keep going back to the same person that botched it. You're just accumulating botched jobs, like your cheeks go like that from the stuff that they put in the cheeks.
Yeah, I don't know.
Get some horrible infection from a Botox shot, or
yeah.
And you go back because the price was cheap.
I honestly don't know enough about that whole industry to say whether, I don't understand it. I don't think.
We probably should stop talking then.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a weird one.
I
think. What's next?
I'll get educated and help Patrick on the done.
On the done.
Should I repeat Ryan's question? What language do you hear when you dream?
No.
Okay, moving on.
But should I tell the pigeon story?
So why does that picture bother you so much?
Because it's a nest. I love pigeons. I love pigeons. No, it's just because Todd was sharing that his wife is scared of birds. Terrified. To the extent where they have to remove the bird houses or something around the house, which makes sense because you don't want the turd. You don't want the poop on your house.
True.
Or cars.
Yeah. Or cars. The reason is because when I was a kid, I remember I was standing in like an alcove and there was an air conditioning unit, and I'm standing there, and I'm relatively tall, so I'm the tallest of these other females I'm standing with, and I hear like a mooing, and I'm like, what's wrong? And I move. And I look up and I realize it's cooing, and I see this large pigeon woman, female, and looking at me, and then she dives down at me and I dive on the street. And that's the memory I have, and that's why I stay away from pigeons. She probably had a nest. She's doing her job.
Yeah. So Todd, we do have a watcher who said that it's awesome that you do CrossFit. So Paul thinks you're cool.
Thanks, Paul.
Paul's a good dude. So yeah. Paul's on board. Patricia, something else I've always wanted to ask you about. You are one of the early, you're like what, employee number? It's a low digit at scrum.org. And so I think that means a lot of access to Ken. And so Todd and I have had interactions with Ken, usually at a distance. We don't like to bother him, try to let him do his thing, but we love the guy. He's given us this amazing career. He's created something that I don't think I don't think I've ever been in the same room as someone who's changed the world as much as he has. He's literally changed the way we do work globally. And so I know that from time to time you get in discussions with him and the opportunities, a lot of access to him. And so I'm curious, what's it like actually, getting to sit down and have like a deep, meaningful conversation with someone who's a modern day genius, right? He truly is. And so what is it like just sitting there and just, getting to have that kind of interaction?
Ken and Chris Schwaber's wife, they're very near and dear to my heart. So we've developed a personal relationship, but he would do something like this. He would say, Ryan, do you think I gave you your career or you gave yourself your career? Right? It's always, when you come into things, we're so quick into solutioning. We're so quick into all these, and he always is just at another operating, just thinking in a different way that allows you to be better and think differently, right? So he's always, you know, we when we were, you know, years ago making a lot of different decisions, he was really focused on the mission, right? And the mission at that point for him is improving the profession of software delivery. And we had a lot of conversations about what is professionalism, but he's always pointed at thinking, well, if I wanted to make a lot of money, I could do that. But Trish, if I was trying to improve the profession, maybe that's not what I would do. And you're like, that's right, right? And so it's always this kind of guiding you, having focus and driving you to think about that. And then the other thing he has always, that's really resonates with me, and this is just like, you know, in terms of thinking about what we do in our industry, is that, you know, just do the right thing, because at least at the end, you've done the right thing. Yeah. And he's said, and I found that that's helped me have a career and to make money. So he's very focused and guided on those things, but he's very rigorous. He's very focused. But the conversations are just, you know, super reflective and allowing you to think about something that if you had taken the extra 2 seconds, you know, potentially could have come back. So reflecting it, but he's also a riot. He's also kooky. He's thinking about all sorts of things we're not even thinking about right now, right? He's thinking about quantum physics. He's studying that. And if you ever want to talk to him, he loves a good dessert. He loves chocolate.
Well, and it's funny you bring that up, because one of the most memorable dinners was with you and Ken and Chris, and we, you know, Dave was there. We were doing a face-to-face, and the whole time I'll never forget, like, this, just, I mean, he's genuinely curious about things, but he also had this boyish grin on his face as he was sneaking pieces of a banana split. And just this really, yeah. And the sweets kept him at the table. We got to keep talking to him a bit, but just I don't know, it's like this endless fascination in the most minute things. And I find that to be really neat. Like everything's cool. Like everything's interesting. Everything has some degree of fascination, but especially the banana split. And I thought that was just such a cute kind of moment that, you know, he's like,
absolutely. I brought him to a sushi buffet, a Japanese sushi buffet. And he was like, and so we're like totally waterfalling the situation. First, we're going to order a round of apps. Then we're going to order all the sushis. And then we'll get to dessert. He's like, I want the fried bananas. And the woman, the server's like, no, that's dessert. And he's like, that's what I want. And he just, all desserts, the whole dinner is just all, that's his chance. It was fried bananas and fried Oreos and all that stuff. So
awesome.
He does, but he doesn't like superfluous things. So he's not into like watching a lot of TV.
Yeah.
You know,
I find like the highly successful people, that's a very common trend. They don't spend a lot of time on the vegging out the TV and stuff like that. And it's been almost every biography you read or every like insight into highly successful people, you'll see that they're not just Netflix and chill all the time, but it's just interesting. So that's why I'm not, you know, sitting on an island somewhere, but no, it's interesting. It's fun to, you know, it's just it's neat to hear kind of some of that inside baseball about some of the people you really look up to, and it's cool to have that access, and it's just one of the many awesome things that comes from, you know, access to the PST community, the ability to be here, and it's just great. And so that's fun. But more
like
about
having access to you guys.
Well, that's hopefully that's all right. But
oof, my beer is strong.
I told you were drinking homeless beer.
Yeah, sorry. I was like, oh, this happens a couple times. How many episodes? I'm like, oh wait, we're live on YouTube. That's right. I'm like looking out my window and like just listening to you guys chat about Ken, which is awesome.
But as far as about you, Patricia, I mean, we're all going to look back on this year. We're in kind of like we're in the middle of the COVID-19 issue, the pandemic, the lockdown. Now, what have you been up to in this lockdown? How are things going for you in Boston? Like, what's that experience been like?
I'm doing a lot of this.
For those of you that are listening and not watching, there's a massive collection of liquor behind Patricia pointing to.
You know, oh man, I got a deeper question that I can add on top of this.
Add it.
I'm going to give you a theoretical. I think you'll like it. So let's say that you're an organization that has implemented evidence-based management in the past year, a year ago. What kind of pivot do you need to make on what you're measuring right now based off of the circumstances of the world? Like, think about that. So I've been thinking about this, right? I've been thinking about places that I've worked with and talked about evidence-based management. I've been thinking about the KVMs and the impact on the KVAs. Like, how can you possibly, how can those not have massive changes in the way that they look at the moment? And if they don't, then are you measuring the right thing? Do you see where I'm going with where I've actually been thinking about this quite a bit? Like, what kind of craziness might be happening with it?
For those of you who can't see, I was looking out the window and reflecting. Excellent question. So this was kind of a cool conversation that we had, and then Ryan, I'll let you know what I've been doing besides drinking.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. My mind just totally took it in a different place.
No, you're good.
That's actually the harder question. Like, what have you been doing besides drinking? So the thing that the example, that you and I were visiting a bit before was, if you're a restaurant right now, a business, right? What do you need to do to make sure at this time that you can stay afloat? So what are the different metrics and measurements that you might look at? So before, if you're a restaurant, you're going to be looking at your reviews. If you're owning a business, you're going to be looking at deliveries, you're going to be looking at number of guests, And then you and I were talking about, you told me the story about how some lady down the street punched a server
at Red Lobster.
At Red Lobster. Love Red Lobster.
Cheddar biscuits.
Because she couldn't get her cheddar biscuits in time, right?
Yeah.
So, but now if you think about that from a restaurant business, you may have limited seating, you have all these different things, but you're trying to look at that throughput. So you're trying to get customers probably out as quick as possible. You're probably trying to look at how long it takes you to process orders, those kind of things, right? You're trying to optimize for something else. And what that really becomes, the conversation really becomes, is what is that goal that's changed, right? So right now you have a fire, you're trying to put that out. So the goal of a restaurant is stay in business. Now we got to satisfy our customers quickly. What can we do? Maybe we don't want to have the most diverse meal. Maybe we want to do some other thing. And what is that value that we have? There's another restaurant that provides a very interactive experience in the Boston area. And they did something cool where they said, that is the thing that we want to do. So now we're going to be able to deliver those meals, the ingredients to you, and now we're going to Zoom and we're going to cook together. We're still having that interactive experience, very personalized experience, right? So their model is different, but they were trying to say, what can we do to keep, true to our proposition that we want to provide to customers? And what that made me think about, and I've been thinking about this for 2 or 3 days, is this notion of the notion of change, right? So even think about how the training community, how we had to think about training has been one thing, and that's what we've always been, right? It's interactive, super interactive, face-to-face. We prefer that. And now COVID's happened. What does that mean? How do we do that the same in virtual, right? And so I think that when you have those different goals, the thing that I've been thinking about, and it's not very fleshed out, but it's this notion of change. And so the immunity to change. But what are those assumptions that we have? What are the excuses that we tell ourselves that have narrowed us down the path? Like you shouldn't derail from what you were thinking about doing. That might change, those goals might change, but I am interested in seeing, do people make a lot of excuses and assumptions? So do people go, hey, you know what, the Agile initiative that we have, we shouldn't do that anymore because I think we need to be really controlled. So I'm going to go back into this stance, right? So there's a lot of different excuses that we can come up. So that's something that I've been thinking about. So I would ask people to revisit what are those things they're really trying to achieve, and look at the measurements around that, because just having information to help you make a better decision rather than a gut-based decision.
That's so interesting. You just said that, and I'm wondering how many companies have used this almost as an excuse to go back to the way they were working before.
Yeah.
And then in a different light too, I can't help but think that, even besides this whole situation, as the world changes, are you still measuring the same things? And are they even relevant anymore? Right. So the restaurant example, you and I have like deep dived into that last week or something. I think we went crazy with it, which was cool. It was fun talking about the Red Lobster punching lady. But think about it. Think about if restaurants were still trying to measure the same factors right now that they were 3 months ago. Like, how long does it take a server to get to a table? How long does it take until somebody's seated? How long does it take till they get their meal? Those things are completely irrelevant now. What if they were still trying to measure them? And how many organizations, if you take that abstract example, are still trying to measure things that are completely irrelevant? And how much time and money are they spending on measuring those things?
Yeah.
Right.
And I think measuring is a component of it, right? I think the other thing is people probably aren't even measuring anything, but it's actually important if you are in a space where you don't know what's going to happen. So you got to run some experiments. Then that's why it's still about empiricism. So it's still about, if you're trying to run an experiment, how do you know if that's valid or not? What are you thinking about? How do you know this is working or not? Maybe you should continue this post-COVID. We're going to be in a different space no matter what, right? Some people don't have to go to their offices anymore. There's going to be a lot of things. And so I'm really thinking about how do enterprises think about, somebody threw this term and I really liked it, redesigning themselves, right? So now you need to be really focused. There are a lot of people out there who I'm sure are thinking, everybody's thinking this, how do I demonstrate my worth to show that I'm valuable to my organization and I don't get canned with this whole sweep because of the economy and the recession, right? So how am I going to demonstrate my worth? How do I know how to invest my money so that we can make sure that we're making the wisest decision? Ryan, you and I've had tons of conversations about this. That should be really urgent right now.
Yep.
And that should push it to the front. I mean, you should be thinking about that anyways, but it should be you can make some smarter decisions right now if you think for 2 minutes.
Yeah, and I think the restaurant thing is such a good example. And you've said value proposition, like fresh food, right?
So I'm in Valparaiso, Indiana, right? So that's my city. Please, no listeners, don't come here. Don't show up at my house. But I'm in Valparaiso, Indiana. It's not a culinary mecca by any stretch, but we have these amazing restaurants in our downtown, and one of them, probably the most popular restaurant, is called Stacks. If you're ever in Valparaiso, go to Stacks. They're awesome. We try to get food from them once a week, just to support them. But what they did, like immediately, they updated their website. Here's how you can order online, and it goes straight to our kitchen. And they told all of their servers, you're now going to deliver food, right? So instead of taking food to a table, you're going to take it to a house. And so we're going to do that safely. We're going to have ways for you to do that. And they also reached out into the community and they said, look, these servers are now delivering food. Please, if you can afford a higher tip, please do that. And so what happened is they also had to simplify their menu. And so they took all of they looked at their data. What's the hot sellers? Like what are the things that sell when people come here in the physical location? So they streamlined the menu. They even put a few alcoholic drinks on there, some of the favorites that only you can get there. And they basically just, they said, this is what we're going to streamline this. We're going to have the servers deliver the food, but we're still going to get the high quality food while it's still hot to people's houses. And they're crushing it. They're crushing it so hard that when even our governor said restaurants, you can start opening up again, use social distancing, prefer outdoor spaces, they said, no, we're not going to do that yet. They intentionally have stayed closed because I believe it's because partially for safety, right? It's a very conscious family that's running it. They run multiple restaurants in Valpo. It's a really good setup, but I think they've also found a way to be, financially successful. Their servers, everyone's still employed. And they don't have to bring people into the restaurant, and it's actually changing the model. And so it's kind of interesting. They measured the things it's really cool how they seem to have either intentionally or unintentionally measured the things that were important, optimized the food that everybody wanted, shifted a workforce from delivering to a table to delivering to a house, prompted the community to please help compensate them better. And all those factors came together. And now they've got this thriving business and they don't have to bring people back they have an amazing space and they're holding off on that. This restaurant example is just so good because I think done right, these restaurants have been able to actually keep going. It's really kind of a neat story there. And
what I appreciate from what you're saying about that example of that restaurant, and I've switched over to mezcal now because that's what was behind me. Mezcal with a slice of orange. Is that it shows that they were not just because they were saying the government said, open up, you can, this is what customers want. I think it shows some sort of gratitude and appreciation and respect for the staff and what they would be willing to expose or not expose to their servers to. So that's cool. You know, another business that has done that in Oregon is strip clubs.
Really?
I'm gonna try to make this the most lowbrow. You just
how do you?
No, I love strip clubs. I mean, I think everybody should have free job. They were strippers were doing delivery, so they would do delivery.
What?
There was a business that opened up in Portland.
Like dance delivery or food delivery?
Two things. Food delivery.
Okay.
And then there was dance delivery, and it was called Boobers. Did you guys hear about this? Boobers.
No,
so you could call up and like a dancer would socially distance. Stop trying to download it right now.
I'm back checking you.
The dancer would come and she would dance, and then there were like drive-through strip clubs, like I guess where you drive through and the dancers are on the side. But boober, like that's
boober. People
did. I respect, you know.
Talking about adapting, right?
Can you imagine like the neighborhood just like, why is there a lady getting naked in your driveway? Don't worry about it, it's boober. So
maybe that's gonna be you can go online. I'm imagining this, I haven't checked it out. You go online and you're like, what kind of entertainment do I want? And that's what shows up, and it's super easy. There's no like calling or I don't know, whatever.
I picture my son like 7 years from now, like ordering a pizza from Boobers at like 12 o'clock, like midnight. And I'm becoming an old man. I'm far asleep by then. And I'm like, come downstairs, like, what is going on?
What a world, right?
Yeah.
What a world. So besides, I think like doing typical things of like watching Tiger King and The Last Dance and, spending a lot of time on TV, I guess I've been doing a lot of thinking. It's at From to Door, we have to think about how are we going to have these conversations when we're so used to talking about, somebody was asking me, you guys are all about the face-to-face. Now, how does that work? Right? How do teams work on those things? So like trying to think about that for our business, our industry. I'm having a lot of good conversations, catching up with people, making sure my family's safe, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, very similar. Tiger King was excellent, kept us busy for a few nights, right?
Yeah, but I'm all about The Last Dance now. That was good.
Yeah. Oh, the 90s Bulls. I mean, that's my childhood. That's the golden era of NBA basketball.
Well, you got to bring it up, Patricia. Come on. I'm so tired of hearing Ryan give us 90s Bulls stats and how the greatest of all time.
Why? Who are you for?
I'm a Philadelphia sports fan.
The 76ers have been amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing in the 90s and early 2000s.
Do you know what my response always is? My response is always double doink, Ryan. Chicago Bears, Eagles 2 years ago.
Yeah. Double doink.
Yeah. How was that Super Bowl workout for you up in Boston, Patricia, a couple years ago? I feel like I can talk smack right now.
Todd, you're not talking to the right person. You're not talking to the right person. I don't care about football. I know that Todd Brady's pants split recently when he was golfing. That's the kind of information I'm aware of.
They split?
They split, like he was playing golf and then he bent over and then they split.
It was Tiger Woods and Peyton Manning, and then who was Brady with? Because I know Tiger and Peyton beat Manning and was it Mickelson? I know Manning won the Pro-Am. It's one of the few times that Manning could beat Brady at something, but one of my all-time favorite comedy bits, right? So Nikki Glaser's doing a roast, and she's, it was a roast of like Charlie Sheen, and Peyton Manning was there, and she kind of turns to Peyton. She goes, "Peyton, I just love you in those commercials you do. You are the best at those. You're like the GOAT. You know what? You're like the Tom Brady of commercials." And it was just, it was so amazing. And Manning just couldn't help but laugh, but you could tell he died a little bit inside too.
Do you guys care about the Celtics?
I loved like the Celtics of the Larry Bird.
The Larry Birds. But do you remember after when like Patino was coach and there was like Paul Pierce, Antoine Walker?
Yeah.
I remember Paul Pierce. Yep.
Paul Pierce. So I don't know.
The Sixers and Celtics have a bit of a thing.
I met Antoine Walker twice.
Nice.
I met him, and I used to be a big NBA fan, and my sisters are big NBA fans. And I met him, and I'm sure he thought I was a groupie talking to him. And he's like, we're talking. And then I was just like, instead of being all like, I just called my sister. I said, yo, who do you think I'm talking to? Antoine Walker. Why don't you talk to him? And that was my one experience with a baller.
But you were like, here,
reaching up.
Because isn't it crazy? Like when you see those, like some of the professional athletes, like, so I've met like offensive linemen from the NFL, or I've met some NBA players, and it's just unbelievable how large human beings can be. Like I met a 6'6" offensive lineman, just like Todd Harriman's just a couple months ago at a Eagles game. He was doing like autographs and stuff like that. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, he's just like a mountain. And this guy's retired for a couple of years.
How much does he weigh?
I'm not sure. Probably like
bills.
Yeah, he looked a lot thinner, I'm sure, than when he played in the NFL. But like most of them are like 6'5", 6'6", 320 pounds. Like that's
like
just
me.
Yeah. Human being.
But that's what I thought about Antoine Walker. I was really surprised to meet him in person because he has a kind of square head. And he looks big, but actually he's just really tall and thin with the square head. He's not like, he's got a little chubby face.
Did you tell him that exactly?
No.
Yeah.
I was like,
you've got a square head and a chubby face.
Talk to my sister. I'm not trying to hook up. Please erase that bit. Oh, that's not possible.
No, this is going live, Patricia. We're well past the moment of erasing things.
Yeah.
This one will lead to comments.
Yeah.
Oh no.
It all derailed when I wrote the bird picture. I knew you would like it.
It's interesting. I find it fascinating how companies have adapted. Even Boober is an interesting story of companies are just trying to stay relevant, right? I mean, they're trying to, Todd, we probably spent the entire month of March reinventing our training businesses, trying to figure out how do we keep delivering training? But not just make money. How do we like actually bring value to the students, and how do we make sure they're still getting a great experience out of it? It's tough. Like we've really had to, you can't just fire up Zoom and throw some slides up and teach a normal class. And so we've basically have reinvented all the activities, and we've redone these murals. And I mean, we've gone through iteration among iteration. We probably have hundreds of hours working in these tools now, trying to figure out how do we tell better stories? How do we have a better interaction? And I think it's working. People seem happy, but man, we've really had to reinvent the business from the ground up.
I think one thing, Ryan, that you said that was really powerful about this, especially because I do a lot of public speaking and sometimes workshops, and it was that when you're in front of the room, the focus is on you, right? So actually a lot of trainers and entrepreneurs, there is a bit of control that you want there. Yep. And so you lose that. So there's the bit where you can't inspect and adapt, because you can't see people's faces. You don't know necessarily what they're doing all the time in the breakout rooms. But I think the big thing is that this has always been about the learners and not the learners, the learnees. It's about the students, not about the teachers, right? And so I think that's really powerful. And maybe this was a good thing to redirect that. But I think that there's also, just in terms of social and what's going on in the world and society, there's a lot more of that resistance to power over people. Yeah. And there's a equilibrium that needs to happen now. And so people can get on that train, and they can do it with the best information they have, with good intentions, right? Being aware of what those intentions are. And that's a good thing, a good step forward, because people, it's not going to be going back to the way things are. And so I think, like Ryan, Todd, you were saying, like, are people going back to the way things were before? They may, and that's that short-term gain that you always talk about. So we'll see what happens.
It's interesting you say that, because it just dawned on me, like, I think about all the time how many times I've heard either through the halls or I've experienced myself that, like, we can't develop a work from home policy because developers are inherently lazy. And I'm just like, that is not, like, I can't tell you how much work I could get done when I was a coder and I worked from home in 4 hours as compared to 8 hours in the office. I just didn't have distractions.
So do you believe that you can have just work in a team? Is it better to work apart or together? Or?
So, I mean, to be honest with you, I was a huge advocate for the fact that the best way to communicate was face-to-face communication. And I think that was because of the immaturity of tools and the hesitancy on a lot of people's behalf to come on a camera, right? And this has turned that upside down, because now some people are requiring, like Ryan and I require, like, you can't attend our training unless you're on a camera, right? And
have to turn it on.
People have become so much more comfortable being on a camera that I'm sort of abandoning that. Like, now I think that there are a lot of things to face-to-face communication, right? Like, there's nothing that you can substitute joking, hallway talk, having a cup of coffee or something like that. But to say that me as a developer, I couldn't be productive, I couldn't code the same way unless I was in the office, I actually think the opposite was true, because I could get more done in 4 hours at home while I'm like binge watching like Band of Brothers or something like that on HBO, just for background noise. But my only distraction was what was on the TV. It wasn't someone came into the room, or I got to pull my headphones off, or like, and the interruptions are, I'm going to send you a message and see if you're available, right? Before, where it would be like a tap on the shoulder and you'd be like, what's happening, right? Like freaking out because people would, I actually one time had a mirror on my desk to see if people would sneak up behind me. Anyway.
I would have picked The Sopranos, but I agree with you.
Yeah, Sopranos is good.
But I'll tell you what, to the point earlier about, the developers are lazy. So coming up through the Fortune 500 in a leadership path, I worked up through that corporate ladder. I would actually argue that the biggest hesitation to a work from home policy is that managers and directors don't know what to do if they can't see the people directly. I think it's actually insecurity on their part as far as, how do I still add value if I'm not over their shoulder pressuring them? And I think there's some derivation of that like, what do I do if I can't just walk around and see everybody working? And I think that's where a lot of the resistance came in. And what COVID basically has done is said, it doesn't matter if you're insecure in your role anymore. People have to work from home right now. And we need to figure out how we add value as leaders with this remote workforce. And I think we still, and again, there's a lot of bad blog posts out there. There's a lot of horrible things in the Agile space about, we don't need leadership. We don't need managers. We're Agile. That's all false. But the way we show up is important. And the way that we support and enable remote people to work well is important. And I think getting over some of those fears of, well, if everyone can work remote, they don't need me, right? We've got to get through that and actually help some of these leaders figure out how they actually do contribute, because I think that's actually the real problem. It's not that it's not that devs are lazy. I think people in the middle especially are concerned about, well, what value do I bring now?
Can I ask you a question, Ryan?
Yeah.
What do you think that leaders and managers can do now that people are generally remote in our space, and they have remote workers to support or to be the best managers and leaders they can? Because maybe they're not used to that, right? Maybe it's like, I can look out and I manage this whole floor, or blah, 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 blah. What do you think that they can do now to support their teams?
I think a lot of it comes down to clearing out the impediments, like getting with their teams and saying, what makes delivery hard in the age of COVID? What's holding us back? And then focusing all of their energy, efforts, capital, whatever they have, to removing those problems, and not worrying about, is Bob 100% utilized, and is Jan at her desk at least 7.5 hours per day? Like, all of that stuff is nonsensical and tyrannical. Like, if that's what you're managing, you should be fired. But if you're actually, I'm serious, like, if that's the value, get out. Like, you're too expensive to just be a clock watcher. But if you're actually figuring out, like, all right, we need the current IDEs that our devs are using, they were designed for all together, one desk, but now we've got these online IDEs where Todd and Ryan can get together online and they can code in the same thing like a Google Doc, and let's get that tool and let's make that. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that leaders and managers can, or like, you know what? We've got TFS behind the firewall, but if we had GitHub online, now that people are remote, life is easier. Let's go to GitHub. That's the kind of things that and so, all right. So as a VP, I got to go sit with the security team. I got to sit with compliance and legal and procurement and make all this happen. And that's my week. Awesome. I just made life easier for the dev team. That's my role. And I wish that they would go into that impediment, grab the scrum masters and say, hey, what's your top impediment for each team? And how can I just plow that thing and pulverize it with my positional authority? That's the role. It's not, well, Patricia, you were at your desk 6 hours and 3 of it was browsing CNN. So we have a problem. Like, it's not that, you know? And so I hope people shift.
You know, this just brings to my mind too, I think, to add to that, that I think it might be good to, like, I think there's a difference between checking in and checking up. I talk a lot, I think about that a lot as my time as a previous product owner, or I talk about that a lot with product owners. Like when you check in, you're asking, how are things, like, what's the status of this? If you're checking up, you're saying, how are things going? So it may not be a bad idea for those leaders to think in the space of being kind and just calling and saying, how are you? You know, just ask that question. Just give somebody, like, well, my kids are driving me nuts. You know, I can't stop fighting with my wife. Like, what do I clean? My package? I don't understand what Twitter to believe, right? Like, just like listening to people too. Like
How are you, Todd? How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it looks like a wicked storm I'm using Boston stuff now. A wicked storm is rolling in here right now. I think there's that too, because sometimes I've met leaders or been in a leadership position myself where, like, you're hesitant to check up. It's easier to check in and ask those kinds of questions than just to check up, right?
Yeah, I would say do that with intention then, and actually listen, because I definitely, and I am guilty of this, but just, you got things on your mind and you're like, how are you? And then you don't actually listen. You know, I think a lot of people do that.
What'd you say, Patricia? I need to get one last more, like, dig in there.
Yeah, I didn't pee, but I did curse.
So Ryan, you were right. You nailed
Ryan
it.
was
She
right.
was going to break one of them. That's why I wouldn't bet you.
You know what, though? We're at that 1 hour mark. Maybe we should just call it a day.
Yeah, my beer's empty.
And the beers are gone. So
I'm about to run a trivia session.
No lightning rounds or anything like that. But Patricia, we do appreciate you spending the hour with us and sharing a drink with us. It's always great to see you. We weren't sure where this was going to go, and it went in a bunch of weird and different and unusual places. I'm going to have to, I never thought I would ever hear the word boober on a podcast, but now we have. And so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
No, but I mean, it's always good to catch up, because I mean, we tease a lot and we talk about silly things, but I mean, it's always awesome catching up with you about these enterprise concerns, because I think you're definitely a leader in this space, and you've certainly given Todd and I a lot to think about as we build our businesses and we work with our companies, and so it's always great to be able to kind of pick your brain, because I think, like I said, you've got a lot of good stuff in this space, and so we always appreciate any time you give us.
Thank you. I am all about authenticity, and I want you all to think about apocalyptic. That's what I want you guys to think about during the pandemic, but also what apocalyptic really means. And I think this is the time of apocalypse.
Cool.
You know what I want everybody to think about, Patricia? How to find their mojo.
Don't fuck the man now, Tom. Don't fuck the man.
Oh, she did it. And she cursed too. Look at that.
Yeah,
right at the end,
Patricia.
She slipped that in.
Thank you, Patricia.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Take care.